Lindsay.
Okay.
Mhm. Getting everybody there. Mhm. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, let me just express my deep gratitude for your donation to the Integrative Learning Center. It means a lot to me. It really, really does. So thank you. I know you come here tonight not just seeking another exercise class or a movement class, but I believe you have come, as I have, because you're seeking a change that inspires you, I think, in a very personal way. And that's the overall intention of these weekly lessons, is to offer you just the right amount of support in order to guide you towards a really personal discovery so that you can access something which is needed in you to create some type of, I would like to say, forward movement in a particular area of your life, which up to now has not been available. And I believe when I reviewed the whole Esalen series, I think that was the intention behind the series. And if I could rename it, I would call it Expanding the Human Potential series, because I think that's what each lesson was designed to do. And as we work through these, I will be introducing you to different perspectives, different movements. And as you probably know, if you've had classes with us at Integrative Learning Center, when we change perspectives, it opens us up to possibilities that were not there initially, but they emerge. And that's what tonight's lesson is going to do. And if I had only one lesson to teach you and I never saw you again, it would be this lesson. And I'm leading with this lesson because everybody gets excited in starting a new series and they usually watch the first one. But you know, when you get to number 10 or 15, I think, I'll cue that. I'll do that later. But I want you to have this lesson because it is layered in depth, and that repeating it, hearing it, experience it from different perspectives, it will take you to a different place. So that's why if there's only one, it would be this. Also, with all these lessons, we're required to give them our own name, okay? So I called this lesson 5 Cardinal Lines of the Human Frame. 5 Cardinal Lines of the Human Frame. And I thought about them as being in beauty, complexity, and symmetry. Now, Dr. Feldenkrais, to him, cardinal in the reference that he uses means foundation of great importance. And you already know something about these cardinal lines. These are the major structures of our human frame. And Feldenkrais talks about these 5 lines. There's one vertical, all right? You would know it going from the tailbone up to the base of the head. You would know one as an arm, another line as an arm, a leg, and another leg. So there's a 1 vertical and 2 and 3 arms, 4 and the 5th line is in the leg. And of course, if I put a little circle here up on top, it would be a little smiley face. This is about the extent of my ability to draw. You would know it as the typical stickman figure, right? Makes sense? Okay. So here's your first perspective change. Okay. Here's the first one. What if, let me just cancel that out. Somehow I lost my screen. What if we begin to take these 5 cardinal lines and look at them from this perspective? So I was drawing this out earlier. So I want to show you something here. So we still have this vertical line that ascends up, okay, right? But the lines from our arms and our legs are a line, but they have a circle here on top. Now, these lines, when I was looking at this, I thought, oh my gosh, these remind me of lollipops, like a sucker, like a Tootsie Roll sucker or Dum Dum sucker. So they are a line, but the line has circles on top. And these circles are connected to this vertical line by these sockets that come from our girdles. So the connection of these balls, these lollipops into a vertical line, that image for me began to open up a different lens of potential than when I look at these 5 lines as a stick. I don't know if it does for you, but visually it was like, I see what he was trying to say. And now here's something that's really interesting too. So we receive these lollipops, we receive these balls, but at the top of this vertical line, it's a special opening up there. And it's another cup up there that opens and receives the ball of the head. So that was pretty special in the perspective change. And I'm going to invite you, when we talk about the cardinal lines in the lesson, to start to transform your sense of lines that connect you to a vertical line, but start to experience the lollipops within yourself, the balls at the end of these lines, because they bring forward a little different potential. Now, the second perspective is this, and we will be mapping out this vertical line. But I want to also change your perspective about this. Yes, there are parts of ourself that feel like they of our vertical line that we can pinch and that we can hold on to, but really that vertical line is more like stacks of circles. With the top circle only being a half a circle. So the vertebra are not just a straight line, they have a depth to them. So we're going to be, in our imagination, reaching in, coming into this area. These are the circles. They're almost like little tires that are stacked on one another all the way up. But the backside, I could come along and I could put my fingers around them and it would feel like a straight line going up. But now we start to have a shift in our self-image that maybe not so much just these straight cardinal lines that seem to connect or maybe seem a little bit elusive in here. Maybe we can start to have that sense that the lollipops and the sockets to the vertical line have more connection. So tonight's lesson, you get to choose. I know that there are people who will be watching this, who will be doing this lesson actually in a recliner. And I want to tell you, when you recline back, this will work well for you. There are some people who are going to be in a bed, and there's some people who are going to be on the floor. All right. So you get to choose where you want to be. And there's some people who will just sit and listen to it and do it in their mind. So that is perfectly fine. And that is another reason why this is such a powerful lesson, because it doesn't require the floor. You could do it on a massage table if you wanted to. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like to have you take your position, whether it's in the chair, the floor, a table, and we'll begin with you reclining back in your chair or lying on your back. The 5 cardinal lines of the human frame. Such beauty, such complexity, and yet such symmetry. So you're reclining back. I just first want you to maybe spread your legs just a little bit apart, just whatever it's comfortable. And you can start to imagine yourself. You can draw your own stick figure there, right? You can start to sense an arm, a right and a left, the two legs, right and a left. And then, of course, that spine that moves from the tailbone to the head. Just start to observe how your 5 lines with the lollipop ball sitting in top of them, how they allow you to connect to the floor. And allow yourself to roll your head a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, to see where that top ball is resting on the floor. Just so, some reference. Is it off to one side? Feel the smoothness, the roundness of the ball? Or does it really take its weight? How heavy is it? We're going to go a little bit deeper into our self-image, and we're going to see if we can't sense these lines just a little bit clearer. I want to start down with the coccyx. We're going to ascend up to the vertical line. So allow yourself to sense, feel, imagine. For some of you, your coccyx, your tailbone will touch the floor. Some of them will be lifted from the floor. And I want you to follow it up slowly, gradually, moving your awareness up the vertical line through the triangle bone called the sacrum. And that vertical line will extend now into the spinal column, into the lower lumbar vertebra, those 5 vertebrae. They start very large, and then they move upward, and they get just a little smaller. And then the lumbar vertebra give way to this next section of the spine as you trace it vertically to the thoracic. And then continuing on up through the shoulder blades, moving through the whole length of your spine, you're going to come into this place where the neck, the base of the neck, makes its transition from what we call the thoracic spine into the cervical spine. And coming all the way up to the head, to the top of the cervical spine, where the head will rest. Now, some areas of the spine are clear, some are very easy to connect to, and others absolutely seem impossible. It's like it skips, like a record, old-time record would skip. Now, let's go back to the vertical line down there by the coccyx. And I want you to imagine that you could take 2 fingers, right? You could take 2 fingers holding around the back side of the coccyx and one on the front side of the coccyx. Remember, we talked about these being like tires or roundedness in the front. And begin to imagine that the fingers from the backside can almost pinch around that vertical, that extended structure of the spine that's sticking out, moving from the coccyx to the sacrum and into the lumbar spine. And imagine that there's another hand, your other hand. These are your imaginary hands that from the front side, past your skin and your flesh, your abdominals, your organs, that you could get down to the bony aspect of the spine in the front, that part that looks like rounded tires. And begin to map out the vertical line of your structure from the front side and the back side. That's it. Sometimes it might be a little bit clearer on the back side in some areas. Sometimes you can imagine touching the front side of your vertebra. When we begin to move from an external to an internal sense of sensing our skeleton structure, we begin to really develop a very special faculty, a very special awareness, a very effective way in helping us to really uncover some differences within ourselves. So again, working your way through the middle of the back, through the shoulder blades, imagining that you could even touch the vertebra that lie at the base of the neck, not just from the behind, but in front. Good. All the way to the base of the skull. And now in your mind's eye, switch over fingers so that the hand in the back that was mapping out the back of the spine now becomes the hand in the front that maps it out. And the hand that was in the front goes behind. So yes, your hands are at your side. You're doing this in your mind's eye. Coming down from that area of the cervical spine into the thoracic spine. It's quite long there in the thoracic spine. And as you're doing this with your imaginary hands, mapping out, working your way down the spine, going down toward the tailbone, and taking in each of these regions, start to spread your awareness out so that you could start to notice what your eyes are doing. When you think of where your hands are moving, how are your eyes, which are in the skull, of course, in the head, in their orbits, they're lying on the floor. Do your eyes move within their orbits when you think of mapping out those lower parts of your vertical line? And if you were to think of mapping out, reversing the direction again, moving from the coccyx, and one last time, mapping out that vertical line. When you map out that vertical line and your hands are ascending up the spine, what do the eyes do there? Do they move up as you think of these higher areas, the opposite ends of the coccyx to the cervical? Good. Now, let me draw your attention to another cardinal line. Let's do the right cardinal line. We'll start there at the hands. When you think of the right hand, the right arm, see if you can feel how the eyes might intentionally shift from where they're resting down, and see if you can notice that they go, if we start down at the palm, the tips of your fingers, and you're going to map out your right cardinal line, moving from your fingers through your palm, giving way to the wrist, the forearm, the elbow. Noticing how your eyes are moving within their orbits, coming up from the armpit into the shoulder blade, collarbone, and its connection into the vertical line. Mhm. And do that one more time, starting again from the fingers. You know, we have 12 different separate eye muscles, 6 in one, 6 in the other. And that's always 6 of the 12 are always moving. And they get turned on or they get tonified in the direction where you direct your thought. Mhm. And the next time that you arrived and you've mapped out the right cardinal line, let's go to the left cardinal line of the arm. So we do the same thing with your left arm, starting at the tips of the fingers, working your way all the way up. Noticing how these different parts, fingers, palm, wrist, forearm, elbow, these parts all coming together to make one line, linking together, letting the eyes track these different parts, bringing it into a unified oneness. Now let that go. Now you've been lying on your back for just a few minutes here. And sometimes just lying on the back this long begins to create a discomfort in the vertical line for some people. Some people absolutely love it with their legs extended like that. So before you make a change, I want to notice the two cardinal lines of the lower legs, the right and left line. Do you notice where the right side of the leg, which one is a little bit more heavier than the other? Which one lies for you better on the floor? Which one, in other words, would be quite clear? It's almost like you could start to sense the that line very easily, just without moving. And all the while, you're noticing if your eyes look in that direction as well. Mhm. So by all means, if you need to bend the left leg, you certainly can in order to ease some kind of tension that may be happening for some folks in that vertical line. But allow your mind, your awareness, your attention to explore the cardinal line of the right leg. Start this time up at the hip joint, as though that you're going to start at the top, the ball, the beginning of the lollipop, and move down that long stick through the knee, through the calf, sensing how the calf muscles just hang from the shin and into the ankle bone and to your heel and even into that right big toe and into the small toe. And of course, you can do that same mapping along the left leg, letting the attention be drawn towards the left leg through the hip, through the ball, moving down all the way into the foot. Good. And once you've mapped out that cardinal line of the left leg, just pause for a moment in your thought. No more mapping. You've stopped, your eyes are closed, and you have this intention that you're not really looking right or left or anywhere. You're just seeing where your eyes just rest in the orbits, where the eyeball just rests in the orbit. Some people even find a sense that one eyeball may be heavier than the other, but your gaze is real stable. Mhm. And now, very slowly, I want you to start to track the pathway of how your eyes move When you start to think very slowly that you want to look down towards your right and left toenails, your big toe, the toenails of your big toe, your right and left. So you look down toward the toenails and then stop looking at the toenails and return it back to that stable place. So I want to repeat this several times of this looking down towards the toenails and then not looking at the toenails. And if you reduce your speed of looking down and then returning by half, you'll be able to get a little bit more clarity on what it is that the eyeballs themselves are doing. That's right. So notice as the eyes look down and toward the toenails, you might feel that the eyeballs themselves start to come a little closer together. And then when you release the thought of the toenails, it's as though the eyes can return back and the eyes separate a little bit. They move to the corners of the orbits. So looking down at the toenails, they begin to converge towards a point. They move in and down, releasing that thought, bringing the eyes back from the toenails. Good. And they diverge or move apart. The eye tension around the eye gets a little less and a little more open. There. When we begin to release the tensions or the spasms around the eye muscles, the tendons that move the eye, when we release that tension, it has a profound effect to release a central tension that is held within the nervous system. Quite powerful. Good. Now, I want you to begin to think of your 5 cardinal lines, your lollipops. See if you can perceive them, all 5 of them at the same time, roughly so, all of them together. And please don't strain to do this. We all come to a point where it's quite difficult to find a line. And when you find that you're straining, just leave it as though that you could wipe your slate clean and come back to it. There. We're not really insisting that the perfection of these 5 lines with their lollipop and verticality be perfect. We want those lines to have a sense of structure so that they can come more figural to the foreground, or they can start to begin to reside to the background, but they don't disappear. That's right. So we have the totality, the wholeness of our human frame and structure in the awareness of the background of what it is we're doing. They don't disappear. And because that's in the background, you can start to free enough of your attention to think of drawing your attention to a couple of inches right below your belly button. Yeah, right below your belly button. And begin to observe how you are breathing, whether as movement happens here when you breathe. Does it lift? Does that area sink? When? When we just even mention the word breath, we automatically all take a breath in. It's natural. It's normal. Consciously draw it in. So notice that when you inhale that the air comes in and this point begins to raise or expand. And then the air begins to be squeezed out of your lungs and that area begins to sink. That's right. So attending to this expansion in the lower abdomen and the retraction. At the same time, you have the background image of the 5 cardinal lines. That's right. And this cyclic movement of your breath, you can you can continue to expand not just below that belly button, but maybe even the sides of the torso a little bit, so that there's some expansion happening along the waist, along the top of that pelvis, on the sides of your lower ribs. Drawing the air in, lines present, ribs opening and widening, maybe going back a little bit. And of course, one side is a little bit more easier than the other. And now as your lines are in the background, I want you to again pay attention to your breath, but we're going to do some movement now. And we're going to begin to just lift the head away from the back of your chair or the back of the floor, as though that you were going to look down at your feet. It doesn't have to be high, but just begin to lift the head and then reverse the movement and lower it and place it back on the floor or the chair. And make sure you have that clarity that there's an actual stopping point as well. All right. And then you'll lift that maybe 3 times, pausing each time in between. And tell me, do you exhale as the head is coming up? Do you inhale? Do you find that when the head lowers back into the floor that you take a breath? Do you hold your breath? Let's see, what do you do with your breath with that? You're overcoming gravity here. It's a big job for the front part of the muscles of your throat to overcome gravity like that. How does the breath assist you? Good. Now, let that go. And you can continue to keep your legs long, or you can begin to bend the right knee so that your right foot is standing. It's totally up to you. But now we're going to start to do something with the right cardinal line of the arm. So your hands are beside you. Notice if your hands are palm up or palm down. And I want you to begin to lift your shoulder blade away from the floor or the back of the chair, and then return it. So you just lift the shoulder blade away from the floor and then allow it to fall back into the floor. Several times. And for some of you, as you begin to lift the shoulder blade, and this is your first time really doing movement, a lot of times we begin to lift the whole arm. That's right. Could you just go ahead and leave the elbow and the hand on the floor? And I'm curious, does the quality of lifting the shoulder blade away from the floor and lowering it back, going slowly, does it make a difference if the palm is up or if the palm is down? So try that. Letting the palms be down, drawing that right ball away from the floor, impacting that right cardinal line of the arm. And so you're breathing in the background. You can sense your breath in the background. It's uninterrupted by this small movement of lifting the shoulder away from and lowering it. Mhm. And sometimes it's helpful and when the palms are down, if the elbows are a little bent and wider than the torso or wider, the elbows are wider than the hands, it might change the trajectory of the ball lifting. We begin to do many repetitions of this small movement. These are like trials, movement trials. And we're trial and error. We're trying to find the most efficient pathway of that ball, of where it is easily being lifted from the floor and returned. And now I'd like you to increase your speed of lifting that ball from the ground, that shoulder blade from the ground, and then letting it go, as though that someone was coming along and we begin to make them small, short, small movements, very simple, but they're very fast, almost like a bouncing quality to that ball. Interesting to move our image from a stick-like to a ball-like makes it easier for that shoulder to move forward and back. Mhm. Now, if you have issues with your shoulder or your neck or your low back, you might find that you will start to do this movement and it feels smooth, it feels great, and then all of a sudden you feel discombobulated. It's like, what? You just get all messed up, as a client of mine said. Stop. Give it 5 seconds. Start again. See if you can start to generate within you this little jiggle, this little wiggle, literally a nice, smooth, rhythmic bouncing of the ball that's leading into the vertical line. Mhm. Good. Now let that go. And you're welcome to change over legs, or you can keep your legs long. And let's see what it's like with the left ball and socket. Mhm. So again, lifting the left ball from the floor. We go slow at first because you want to find where does my hand, where does my palm lie in relationship to my elbow, in relationship to my shoulder blade, because that will make a difference of sending the motion into the shoulder blade, which will allow it to spill over and impact the vertical line of the spine. And you can start to get a sense that if you're not holding your breath, there's something that is informational to allowing just the cycle of the in, the cycle of the out, not holding your breath. Mhm. And then start to move a little bit quicker. And as you make this movement a little bit quicker, some might be a little different on this side. It may feel more coordinated or immediately start to feel discombobulated. Mhm. And when you feel that out of rhythm, out of sync, can you give yourself permission to stop? You want to give yourself permission to stop. In 5 seconds, start again. It's almost like a reset. This vibration that moves through that socket is a very, very powerful neurological influence in our system. We can start to use a sense of vibration moving through us that really starts to inhibit tension that accumulates along your cardinal line. Okay, stop. Now, what if you were be able to lift the right shoulder blade from the floor, let it go, then alternate lifting the left, letting it go, and then right and left, going back and forth. One, then the other. And as one is lowering, one is lifting. And sense how that starts to influence that vertical line. Vibration, and you decrease that amplitude or the distance that you're traveling, and let's go just a little bit faster. Oh, I got discombobulated. I'm going to give myself a break. I'll start again. Good. There's such a difference in being able to move quicker or faster and not hurry. That's it. Then you start again. And when we start to differentiate the difference between going fast and hurry, it's the difference between a sympathetically charged, bouncing around like a squirrel and a rabbit, to a very highly trained athlete that uses such beauty and symmetry with the complexity of their body and movement. It's very different. Good. Now let that go. Now, check in with those 5 cardinal lines again. And then once or twice, begin to lift your head away from the floor and see what it's like now, just lifting your head. Does the head feel a little bit lighter? You definitely can sense gravity. You overcome it. This lesson is about overcoming gravity, just once or twice. See if that made any change. And now bend your left knee, bring so that the foot is standing. The right cardinal line of the leg is out. And draw your attention to the back of the right knee, the back of the right knee. And begin to allow the back of the right knee to lift away from the floor and then to come back into the floor. So it doesn't lift high. It's not actually like bending your knee like the left one is, but it's just a small reversal so that we are lifting the back of the knee and then we lower it back into the floor. And we lift and we lower. That's right. And you know what we're going to do. Our awareness of our 5 cardinal lines in the background as we lift and lower, and we gradually move the knee in such a way that it's quicker. You won't lift as high, but the movement of lifting and lowering, it's almost like a nervous Nelly of a leg. You see that sometimes. But it's a funny thing, you start moving this leg and then all of a sudden it goes, whoop, it loses that rhythm. It no longer gets smooth. You pause and you start again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Your attention free, your attention is spread out of this little quick tap, 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 tap. Good. And then now let that go. Draw your awareness to your left hip, the top of the left hip. Yeah. The back of your pelvis, the back of that hip joint resting on the table, on the floor, in the chair. And begin to lift that left side of the hip up. Just lift it up just a little bit so it just starts to clear the floor, and then plop some part of it. The left hip is lifting. So this is a little different movement. We're not bouncing the left knee or anything like that. So notice that as the left hip starts to come away from the floor, are you the type of person that uses that left foot to push the foot down that assists the hip to come up? Okay. Well, what if I were to ask you, could you move half as much as you're doing? All right. So it's not about clearing that side of your pelvis or that side of the hip, and not use your foot, or at least not as much as what you're doing, half as much as you're doing, so that that movement is initiated somewhere in the front of the hip by the groin crease, as though that I could wrap my hand around that lower abdomen and pull from the groin crease, from the left groin crease up toward the midline of your belly button. So is that, could you allow your abdominals to move in such a way that it could lighten the load of that left hip? So something within the front part of the abdomen starts to ignite this movement of lifting the ball from the socket rather than the foot. Good. And a little bit quicker, a little bit smaller, less of that leaning into the left heel or pressing the left heel into the floor. No need to hold your breath. Good. Let it go. All this jiggling and wiggling. Again, recognizing that anytime that we intentionally put vibration into the system through the balls and the sockets, through these cardinal lines, because of the powerful influence of the nervous system that controls muscular tension, vibration at these junctures allow the nervous system to inhibit tone, this accumulated tension that happens throughout your day, how you walk, how you move, your old back pain, your new back pain, your shoulder. We don't recognize this accumulation, and vibration like this literally inhibits it, turns it off, allows the lines of your human structure to be more available to transmit forces along them. Because as you know, there are forces acting upon your life that remain totally out of your control and quite often out of our comprehension, right? And certainly there have been experiences that you've had that can never be forgotten or changed. And yet, these forces, these memories, while they're not in our control, they're within our influence. And these vibratory motions like this allows us to have a shift in perspective, allows the nervous system another option, another choice, so that we can then begin to choose how we respond either to what has happened to us in the past or what is happening to us in the present. Now change over your legs and allow the left leg to be long and the right knee to be bent. And begin to bring that awareness to that back of the left knee, and begin to allow the back of the left knee to move away from the floor and then plop back into the floor. Away, to and from, to and from, to and from, to and from, back and forth. Good. Then a little quicker. Yeah. There are some times when the nervous system and the harmony of the skeletal system and the muscular system are such that the beauty and symmetry, this little bounce, 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 bounce could go on at for infinite. There's no taxing. The breath is cycling in the background. Could you allow that little bouncing to reach someplace up into the head between the shoulder blades? Mm-hmm. Very fast. Mm-hmm. And then let that go. And now how about that left hip? Can we begin to, excuse me, the right hip? Can we begin to let that right hip ascend from the floor and then back down? Try it a couple of times. It's our initial instinct to push with the foot that lifts the pelvis from the ground. Absolutely. But we know it can be done also that way, which is fine. It's fine. And yet, when we restore choice to our system, another way of doing it, as we restore choice, it gives us this invitation to, to really invite, accept the change that we're really seeking. Mhm. So, how can you use that crease in the front of your right groin as though that you could move the tissue of your lower abdomen, your belly, pulling from that area that would allow, like a puppet string, that right side of the pelvis to lift from the ground and then lower? Mhm. And a little bit quicker. Mhm. Plop, 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 plop. This reminds me, I see the the movement reaching into the chest, into the heads of people. Reminds me of my granddaughter. We put her in this, she's only 5 months, and as she gets ready for her nap and she's doing her wind down at night. And she is in this little kind of swing that allows her to go jiggle back and forth. We call it like a little chi machine. It just kind of wiggles her and she just zones right out. And you're not straining with this, right? This is a pleasurable exertion. Connect that to your movement now. That's a pleasurable exertion. It's powerful, it's easy, it's healthy, it's efficient. Ah, then let that go. Let your leg be long. I was doing this lesson with a client of mine who has Parkinson's, and it has been the go-to movement for him to reset something deep within him. Imagine what this could do for someone who has multiple sclerosis, right? So the aim here in these lessons is not moving into relaxation. You feel that though, right? You feel how your structure has changed by lying on the floor, or has the floor changed in relationship to the structure? Hmm? The aim of these lessons is to bring us into this powerful, easy exertion. But we first have to reduce the tension, that tension along the cardinal lines. It's what helps us begin to differentiate what's called useless movement. We have no idea how many useless movements that we are doing that takes us away from really being efficient. Good. Now, bend your knees, one last movement, both of them standing. And a little bit um, uh, take at least half the distance. If your feet are a little wide, I want you to narrow your distance between your feet. And I want you to begin to take your right knee and bring your right knee in the direction of the chest, as though the right knee is just a little bit over the right hip. And the leg of the right knee just hangs down, the foot just hangs down. And I want you to move the right knee headward a little bit and then back off and put it right back to where it just stationary holds. As though that you can have the right knee move in this vertical, moving parallel to your vertical line, moving a little bit headward and then stacking up over the hip. So you don't, it's not putting your foot down towards the floor. The amplitude is not very, it's not a lot of distance traveled, Tony. So back off on that distance travel. That's better, Robin. Good. And then begin to a little quicker. Can you pulsate that knee moving forward, headward, and over the hip? That's it. Letting the foot hang and feeling that pulsating movement, not letting the foot move to the floor, Manju, keeping the knee over the hip, more towards the torso, back and forth, back and forth. Good, good. And then letting that go, putting that foot on the floor, pausing for just a moment. Noticing that breath. And of course, we're going to do the same thing with the left knee. And remember the breath, the cyclic motion of the breath in the background. It's available to you. So draw that left knee up. Find your spot. Find that spot where that left knee is just beyond the left hip joint, just a little bit. That's right. And then you can start to move it a little headward towards the mouth and then away from, but you never really let the knee go past the hip so that the foot goes toward the floor. We're just keeping it in a small range of hip flexion, knee flexion. There you go. As though that the top of the knee spills a little bit more. That's it, Martin, into your chest. Quicker, a little quicker. Feel this vibratory movement, this shaking, this releasing of tension, breath in the background. Good. Releasing that, letting your legs be long. Taking in the totality of the 5 cardinal lines, the vertical line from the coccyx to the head. The right and left cardinal lines of your arms and of your legs. Just notice whether the contact of the floor is the same or has something changed there. Maybe the quality of your head rests differently there. And observe your face. Sense the width of your eyes. Corners of your mouth, your ears. Notice if the face itself can feel like it's a little bit more wide and broad. This quickly helps you determine the state of your autonomic nervous system. When you're wide, the eyes are resting wide in their orbits. Yeah. The tension out of the face. Notice how this movement distraction that we've been doing has really taken you to allow something new. Now begin to slowly roll over to one side and to get up And as you roll over on one side, you can use all four limbs to get up. That is, you can be on your knees and you can help with your hands on your floor, however it is for you. Or if you like to stay in that place and end your lesson with just laying on the floor, staying in your reclined position of the chair, that's fine too. And then you begin to, for those of you who want to come and bring yourself into standing. And we, after lessons, begin to stand for just a moment before we begin to walk around. Because how you lie on the floor, the parts of you that are lifted away from the floor, that are contracted, are the same parts of you that are contracted in the upright. You just can't feel them. You don't have any reference. But notice if the floor was behind you, how your shoulder blades begin to hang, how your tailbone begins to hang between, that vertical line begins to hang between your feet. And then take that into walking. Mhm. Great. Good. All right. So that's going to conclude this evening's lesson. And I want to let you know that this will be available on replay. You'll get a notification, and that notification will take you to a link. Integrative Learning Center has its own YouTube channel. Aren't we special? We've decided how to do that. So they will be posted into a YouTube, so it'd be easy access for you. So this will convert, and you'll have that later on this evening, okay? Or for sure by tomorrow morning. All right. So this is a time where we can sign off if you're ready to go. And I'll stay on the line for just a few moments. And actually, I have about 7 minutes. So if there's something you would like to share, you're always welcome to share. But I also want to invite you, the intention of these lessons too are to take you to a place that is, for some of us, quite quiet. And so I want to honor that. So if that's where you're at, absolutely. You will hear things on the replay, so you don't need to stay on. You can just let yourself go with that. And if there's some questions that you might have or some comments that you would like to share of the change in perspective that this brings you, we're welcome to hear that too. So if you have anything you would like to share, go ahead, and there is at the bottom of your Zoom is a icon that says reactions. If you click on reactions, the bottom of that says raise hand. So if your hand is raised, then I'll call on you. And I see a thumbs up from Heather. Oh, it's a hand. Okay. So I'm going to call on Heather. And so, yes, Miss Heather.
Hi, thank you. Carol, I have a little bit of pain here that I'm not accustomed to in my left area there. And so I just thought I may as well mention it because I'll be, I'm looking forward to just maybe going a little bit less in that area with what we did in maybe 2 days or something like that. That's a bit of a surprise. Yeah, because it's I don't with Feldenkrais, I don't tend to get sore, so I know I did a little bit more there than your typical Feldenkrais, and I get that that's going to in the long run really be good. This is really good for me because I'm so stuck there. And I was just noticing the other day, how I really don't move in that area on both sides. So it's not a surprise. Could you make a suggestion for that?
I would love to. I would love to. I just happen to have a shoulder blade here with an arm. And one of the things that happen when we do this lesson, and we're not used to, this is perfect, Heather. Thank you so much. Because this is typical in an image of a cardinal line that it stops right here. And that your image, maybe not you personally, all right, but your image of the nervous system stops right here. And that there's not this connection of the blade that moves across the ribs. So it can either be kind of sticky back here where the ribs and the blade meet, or more likely, Heather, it's right here where your collarbone attaches. All right. So this is an example of my right shoulder blade. This would be my right collarbone. And so when you do this movement of lifting the blade from the floor, the posturing of the arm is real important. So you might even do better with the arm being straight out and allowing the blade to lift from the floor like that, rather than in this. If your lower arm and your upper arm aren't real congruent, you don't get the ball moving in the socket like this. This is not Heather. And so therefore you try to lift and it's like, it's really causing more of a strain.
Okay.
So changing the arm, but also playing with the bouncing, the vibration of the opposite diagonal. That would be your right knee, tap, 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 tap. The right pelvis, tap, 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 tap.
Yeah, the right pelvis was really, really kludgy.
Oh, isn't that interesting? So they work together as a team.
Okay.
They work together as a team in the function of movement. Okay. So in short, either change what's the long end, short, bend, or always go to one of those 6 points that is the easiest.
Okay.
Go to the easiest. Okay. And then you build upon there. And of course you can go, it's not about going slower, because this lesson is about finding the right trajectory that has the most amount of congruency.
Great.
Then you send vibration through it. And that's what changes the tension along the line.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You bet. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Carol, what are the 6 points?
What are the 6 points? Okay, just to in review: shoulder 1, shoulder 2. What did we do in the legs?
We lifted the knees.
We did one knee, back and forth, up and down, other knee. And then we did the hips.
Okay.
We did the hips. Those are 6. But you know what? There's one more, right? We did the direction of where the knee was bent, right? The knee was bent. And we brought the knee over the chest. So really, I guess there's 8. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And all of those movements are in service that we keep the image of our cardinal line, we keep the image of our breath.
Got it.
Great. Mm-hmm. Time for one more. All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you all next week. And again, this is my #1 lesson. You'll get a lot out of this, and you can play. You can do a lot with this one. And kids can have fun, and people who have neurological challenges can have fun, and people who have orthopedic problems can have fun. So, okay. All
Thank
right.
you so much, Carol.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carol, so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.